Welcome back. Is rabies something that we should be worried about? According to the Florida Department of Health, 59 animal rabies cases were reported in our state last year. Sarasota County is one of only 4 counties to have 4 or more individual cases. Animals carrying the virus in our area include deer, bats, raccoons, and now bobcats. Joining us for more on rabies here on the Suncoast is Tom Higginbotham, Administrator of the Environmental Health for Sarasota's branch of the Florida Department of Health, Dr. Brian GARBY, an emergency care physician at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and ABC7 South County reporter Christopher Brantley. Christopher, I'm actually going to start with you because you talk to that family and you don't see anything like that every day.
No, you don't. And they were remarking that this is kind of an unusual circumstance. They were all gathering for Christmas, and they certainly have a story to tell from this Christmas. But they all kept up their spirits. None of them were scratched. There was one possibility that one of the grandchildren got a scratch, although they thought the scratch might have been from a previous incident. So I think they kept their spirits up largely because they didn't get scratched. So they did get the shot.
Were they traumatized?
But they were pretty scared, that's for sure. And the grandmother, Karen Morse, told us she's going to think really hard before she opens her front door. She lives right on the back of a preserve. That's why they think the bobcat came out.
Still, and you know, if you live on the edge of a preserve, you see wild animals. That's kind of what you're looking for when you live, near wetlands and so forth. But traditionally, when we think of rabies, we used to think of rabies dogs. We often think of raccoons, bats, but not necessarily bobcats. Are things changing?
Well, I don't think that things are changing. We do see that happen from time to time into bobcats and foxes. So obviously this bobcat came into contact with something that already had rabies. It could have happened weeks ago, but finally manifested when, unfortunately, this attack took place.
And as the woman there said, what was interesting is it looked like a healthy animal. So you can't necessarily tell by appearances whether an animal is infected with rabies or not.
It depends on how far the disease has progressed. But if you have an animal that is acting unusual, and bobcats typically will avoid people. So you had a bobcat run into a house chasing a dog.
Unusual.
That's very unusual. That is a red flag right there. They were very smart to get that bobcat out onto the lanai, separated from the rest of the family, and call Fish and Wildlife.
And what some people, commented, as Christopher mentioned in this story, the video is disturbing in terms of how officers had to try to contain the animal. Were they prepared for that? Is there anything other that they could or should have done?
Well, that doesn't happen every day. So in hindsight, certainly they may have wanted to be more prepared. In the future, I think that they will be. And I think that they'll also probably want to get their vaccinations, their pre-exposure vaccinations, so they don't have to go through the more painful shots after exposure.
Doctor, how often do you see cases coming into your emergency room?
Well, we don't really see cases of rabies per se. What we see are cases of possible exposure, and I'd say we see 3 to 5 per year anyway, maybe more. These are all reported to the health department, and the exposures differ between what we think are trivial exposures, such as maybe just exposure, petting an animal that maybe later people felt was rabid, to anything like tearing of the skin or exposure of mucous membranes to fluid from the animal, which is obviously a totally different situation.
You can be exposed to a rabid animal but not necessarily get the virus.
Correct. Correct.
But still you have to take those precautions.
Right.
And I have a question, because they said the bobcat urinated all over the living room of the home, then through the home, and that was largely the reason the family decided to get their shots. Can you get the rabies shot, the rabies through the fluid?
Well, you can, but not through intact skin. But you're dealing with kids in the family, and maybe they were exposed to the fluid and put their hands in their mouth or around their eyes, and those can certainly be portals of entry.
Now, the fact is, the consequences of contracting rabies can be very severe, and in this case, there were cuts. The dog got bit. For humans, what could happen?
Well, the worst case scenario is that you contract a fatal encephalitis or infection of the central nervous system.
How does that happen?
Well, if you have documented rabies, unfortunately, if you get a advanced case of rabies, untreated, it's pretty much fatal. There have been, I think, 2 reported cases of people with known, documented CNS rabies that have survived. One was a girl in Wisconsin back in 2004. Another was a young girl in Colombia, South America. But those are the exceptions to the rule.
And Christopher, everyone in that house got shots?
Mm-hmm. Everybody got the shots. The dog had its preemptive rabies shot, as all dogs are supposed to have. The family got all the shots they needed. And so far, as I understand it, nobody's ill or anything.
Okay, we are just getting started. There's more in our discussion coming up, along with a check on our forecast, so back in a moment. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing a recent rabies alert on the Suncoast and what you need to know about the virus. Our guests tonight are Tom Higginbotham of the Sarasota branch of the Florida Department of Health, Dr. Brian Garby of Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and ABC7 reporter Christopher Brantley. So, this incident happens. Christopher, what happens to the family in terms of getting treatment?
They were sent to Venice Regional Hospital, first of all, to get the rabies shot. Found out that Venice Regional didn't have enough of the serum to go around, and so they basically spread the family out to 4 different hospitals, from Venice Regional, Lakewood Ranch, Doctors Hospital, and Sarasota Memorial
Tom,
Hospital.
were you involved in that?
I was not. I was not involved until the second individual was attacked.
And so, here's the thing. People may wonder, going to Venice Regional, going to, why did the family have to go in 4 different directions?
Well, it's very unusual to have this number of people with a potential exposure. Some of the smaller hospitals, due to the expense of the serum, may not keep as much on hand as you would think, because you typically don't have 4, 5, 6 people needing the shot at once.
Wow. So, Dr. Garby, Sarasota Memorial Hospital has sufficient quantities of the serum.
Yes.
Explain to us why it's so expensive and the shelf life, which also makes it difficult for smaller hospitals to keep it in stock.
Well, there are 2 different shots that are given. There's a human immunoglobulin that's given, and that provides what we call passive immunity to the victim. In other words, it inactivates the rabies virus. That immunoglobulin is generally injected around the site of the bite. Usually it's on the hand, and then half of it's injected around the bite. The remainder of the immunoglobulin is injected in the shoulder, usually in the same side. Then the person needs to undergo vaccination. So there's a series of 4 vaccinations. The expensive part's really the immunoglobulin.
Well, I want to get to the expensive part, but I remember growing up, everyone's fear is that if you had to get rabies shots, it's like very painful. It's in your abdomen, but that's not the case anymore?
Correct. It's given now the immunoglobulin is still given at the site of the bite, but the other shots are given in the deltoid muscle up in the upper arm.
And it's very expensive.
Well, in the U.S., the average cost of treatment runs about $1,500 for the immunoglobulin, and then the series of 4 vaccinations that follow.
Covered by insurance, Christopher?
I'm told the family, the grandchildren, the children were all covered by their insurance, but I was told by Karen Morse that her insurance, her Medicaid, did not cover it, and she said it was about a $3,000 bill.
Why would that be? I mean, I know we're not experts on Medicaid, but why wouldn't Medicaid cover it?
Well, you'd probably have to ask the Medicaid people.
You know, Tom,
that's a good question.
You know, we talked about earlier that Florida is amongst the states, probably because of all the wildlife we have around here and the size of the state, that there are more cases in Florida than elsewhere. But is it different in other parts of the country, let alone other parts of the world?
Well, certainly, you have a lot more occurrence of rabies in other parts of the world where public health hasn't been working on it as long as it has been in this country. And one statistic that's important to note, that the last time a human being acquired rabies in the state of Florida was in 1948. That individual died because he refused treatment. So before then, you have to go back into the earlier part of the 20th century. So since then, we have prevented rabies deaths in the state of Florida, with the exception of people that came here from other locations, other countries, and in one case, an individual who came from North Carolina died of rabies. So
Because they were infected elsewhere?
because they were infected elsewhere.
Right.
Yes.
Now, when you have the animals out there who are infected with rabies, are you concerned about the spread of it amongst animals, amongst animals who may be going from one area to another? What is preventing the rabies from basically just exploding in the environment?
Well, being that rabies, once an animal starts to show symptoms, as we've said, it will die pretty quickly.
How quickly?
With less than a week, even within a few days. That's a good thing. We're glad that the virus will kill them quickly. Now, animals could take advantage of other animals that are sickly and aren't able to get away, and that could be, I'm surmising a little bit, but that could be the case with this particular bobcat. May have come across a raccoon, which is the largest reservoir for rabies in the state, and made an easy feed.
Doctor, what advice can you give people who are watching this right now if they encounter an animal that could have been exposed to rabies? Because nobody's going to willingly or wants to go through those shots at that expense. So what are the do's and the don'ts?
Well, number one is to avoid contact with any animal that may be acting strangely or aggressively. Certainly I wouldn't approach any wild animal, especially if they're coming towards you. I'd run the other way as quick as I could. If you happen to be scratched or have any sort of interruption of your skin surface or exposure of any of your mucous membranes to the, say, the saliva of the animal, you definitely should seek treatment for that. Ideally, you would have the animal quarantined if you can locate a wildlife officer or call the Florida Fish and Game Service or Wildlife Service to get that animal and quarantine him. That'd be a big help in determining whether or not, number one, if this animal is rabid, and may help you avoid some of the necessary treatment.
You know, the difficulty, Christopher, is I know even in my own neighborhood, you know, sometimes there are you know, cats out there who have no homes, and you have kids who think the cats are cute, and you want to take care of them, but people don't always understand there are dangers out there that they and their children have to be aware of.
In full disclosure, I live only about a mile away from this, and I've seen bobcats wandering through my neighborhood before, and pretty much all down River Road, if you live down River Road. The tendency is you want to pet an animal. You know, who doesn't love to pet a cat or a dog? You know, I think people just need to be really careful because if the animal is wild, you don't know what animal it is, it's always best to perhaps stay away.
And Tom, I would imagine another difficulty would be is that if you suspect or fear that your dog or cat that you own could have been exposed, because then you're adding into the mix people's emotional ties to their animals, and they may not want to think that this could cause their animal to be put down.
That's why it is imperative that everybody get their pets vaccinated. That's the #1 way to prevent them from coming down with rabies. If they are attacked by a known rabid animal, even if they are current on their shots, we recommend a booster shot immediately afterwards.
I don't think people know that.
They should. Please know that. You know, get your animals vaccinated, including cats. State law as of 1994 has required that cats be vaccinated as well. In the early part of the 20th century, the problem was dogs. Now we're seeing more cats because of feral populations. People love cats. They would like to take care of them. But even if they get vaccinated once through various programs, you don't know what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years.
I could be proud to report to you that the cone dog Scruffy got his vaccination just last week or the week before.
Good job.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus what some of our viewers are saying about sweeping races for the Sarasota County School District. Welcome back. What do you need to know about rabies? Could it be a threat to your family or your pets? Our guests join us now for final thoughts. Christopher, what do you take away from this story?
Well, this isn't something we see very often. We especially don't see it caught on camera, and props to the grandchild for being able to keep his cool and film the whole thing to show what happened. But you know, I think this is really a wake-up call for folks to be extra careful, especially if they live close to a woodsy area. This woman lived right off a preserve. And it raises the point, make sure you're animals are vaccinated, and make sure that you take precautions, even if you haven't been scratched, even if you've been around an animal that does have rabies. It's important.
And Doctor, what is your takeaway? Is it so crucial that if you are exposed or your family is exposed to seek medical treatment just as fast as you can? What should you do first?
Well, that's true. I really think the best cure is prevention. And but if you are exposed, and particularly if there's any broken skin at all, or if you're in doubt, the number one thing you should do is decontaminate the site quickly, flush it with water. You can use a dilute betadine solution if you have that in the house, or just plain soap and water. That has been shown to dramatically decrease the risk of contracting rabies. And after that, obviously get to the nearest emergency care facility and get the proper treatment.
I mean, should you stop to find out if that facility has the serum first before you go, or just go?
You know, I think you could just go there, and they can direct you probably more quickly than you could yourself to a facility that may have the proper vaccination.
Tom, should we be concerned any more than usual about rabies right now?
No, and I don't want to sound like a broken record. As I said, get your pets vaccinated. Don't keep food outside to draw wild animals, and keep your garbage contained. Another thing I want to point out is that the Florida Department of Health in Sarasota County and Sarasota Memorial have plenty of human immunoglobulin and vaccination in stock. And even if we ran out, we can get it within a day. There's plenty of it out there. People should not be concerned about that.
And you know, we see bobcats, you know, in this case, the number of species that are dealing with rabies right now, it's not expanding or expanding?
It looks like it's staying pretty static. I mean, we see it a little bit higher in one county, and it will go down and increase a little bit in another.
Okay. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about the pay raises for the Sarasota County School District. This week, the school board approved a 4% raise for all teachers, support staff, and administrators, bringing salaries back to pre-recession levels. Now, teachers will be offered a starting salary of $42,000 a year. Here's what some of you are saying about the decision. Elizabeth Hacker writes, "It is still not enough. I do not know how people justify paying corporate executives hundreds of thousands of dollars, and those who teach our children for 12 or more years get paid squat." Diana Dougherty writes, "In regard to merit pay, school principals do know who their ineffective teachers are, but few are willing to put in the effort it takes to remove them from their jobs. Instead, they put the blame on teachers' unions, saying their hands are tied. The problem with merit pay is that teacher evaluations are currently linked to significantly high test stakes. This doesn't effectively consider the impact of teaching students with special education needs, English language learners, and the impact of poverty, etc." Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Tom Higginbotham is Administrator of Environmental Health for the Sarasota branch of the Florida Department of Health. Dr. Brian Garby is Emergency Care Physician at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and Christopher Brantley is our South County reporter.